how come the BNP were able to secure such a landslide victory? How would you describe the overall sentiment of the people in Bangladesh?
The main debate was how can we make the changes? Because people wanted a fair system, but this cannot be achieved just simply through another election. From that perspective, you cannot think in the same way as you could think in 20 years ago. Also, the reality of our neighbors, like India, they want to establish a greater India, what they call Akhand Bharat. Bangladesh can no longer afford to be, a satellite state.
What do you think the reasons are for that awakening? Why have people realized that this old kind of party politics has failed the country so miserably?
So you need to understand the uprising in July 2024. That time the loyalty was very, on the personality based. And they were very loyal to them, no matter what they do. My point is this generation is different. This Islamic sentiment, and that is growing and growing. If you can establish a society based on the accountability and justice, then you can produce a honest leader. If you accept this, the status quo, then you cannot make the change. You got to raise up. That is where you can make the real change.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Narrative House podcast. I'm your host, Omer Hussein. Last week, many people would have seen that the Bangladesh elections took place after the fall of Sheikh Hasina. However, for many Muslims, it didn't even register on their radar. But today, I really want to unpack the recent elections and understand what's happening in the country. I have a special guest, a barrister and a political activist, Rezaul Karim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you for joining us today to discuss the recent elections. As I said, many Muslims, unfortunately, haven't been following the events in Bangladesh, and for many of them wouldn't even know that an election took place. How would you describe the overall sentiment of the people in Bangladesh, particularly in light of the fall of Sheikh Hasina about a year and a half ago after the uprising?
Well, the sentiment of the people back in July 2024, when Sheikh Hasina actually flee the country, was kind of relief for everyone, because she's been there for 16 years, established her authoritarian regime, which was very brutal. So relief was the first sentiment. Then this election, people were, after the Hasina, people were looking for some changes. And they definitely did not want to go back to the same system that produces fascist ruler like Hasina. So the main debate was the how can we make the changes? Because people wanted a fair system, wanted the emancipation of from foreign dominance, and the economic justice, independent judiciary. So these are the natural expectation people had, but this cannot be achieved just simply through another election. So initially people were not interested about the election. The main discussion was the reform and how can we achieve these changes. So there was discussion like some people wanted a complete change of system, a structural reform. Some people wanted the change in the policy, not a structural change, but within the system, some reforms. So that was the discussion and debate. In the meantime, when the interim government formed, they also took over this debate, and they did not actually accommodate those kind of changes like structural changes. So they actually control the discourse of this.
Okay.
So at some point, people thought, okay, it's nothing happening. Actually, not much happening in terms of reform, and even the political parties on the ground, they could not agree on. And at the end, they left it for the referendum. So people thought, okay, let's have an election, let's elected government to come in power, and then we will demand these changes. So my answer is, even the election took place, that doesn't mean that that aspiration of the people actually ended. It actually gone to a new phase, you can
So
say.
that's really interesting. So what you're saying is that the people on the ground weren't necessarily just demanding an election. And the reason for that is that they believed that they needed real structural changes to the politics of the country.
Exactly.
If that's the case, how did they believe they could achieve those without an election? What was their thinking in terms of achieving those real changes?
Just people knew that if after the Hasina, if there's an election, then the result we could expect, because there was only two dominant political parties: is Awami League and BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party. So, and BNP had ruled the country previously, so people know them. They have their history of the corruption and nepotism. It's basically the same system.
Yeah.
So first thing, people didn't want to get back to the same system. So BNP was not a choice, auto choice for them.
Yeah.
But if there is a political vacuum, someone has to come.
Yeah.
The interim government could not make those changes because they are there for a temporary period, and the legitimacy issue and all kind of things. They could facilitate the discussion, which they did, but what I feel that they did not accommodate all the opinion. Rather, they wanted to channel the discussion in a way that actually fit their agenda.
Okay.
So people on the ground, they understood that through this interim government, we are not going to get the changes. So at the end, they said, okay, let's have the election then.
Okay.
This is how they come to the election.
I see.
It's not that they were looking forward to the election as a medium of change.
Yeah, that's
But
interesting.
there's no other alternative. It's not going anywhere. So they thought, okay, let's have the election, and the elected government, we can demand those changes to the elected government.
Yeah. So, I mean, the interim government was led by Muhammad Yunus.
Right.
And obviously, you're saying that the people did not feel that real change was going to come at their hands.
Mm-hmm.
But what's quite interesting is for a population like Bangladesh to almost go away from, I would say, the current day thinking that elections is what brings change, and demanding actually that more structural reforms need to take place. So I think that shows quite a lot of political awareness not to fall for the trap of the party politics. Because as you say, there has been like a revolving door between the Awami League and the BNP. And that's the same in many other countries. Well, even if we look to the UK, we see the Conservatives, Labour, and then the odd time now we're seeing potentially Reform and other parties. But that is quite I would say, quite a deep understanding of the limitations of the election process.
Right. It's the experience people had. Bangladesh got independence 54 years ago. And we had this, this corrupt system, the politicizing the institutions, and the foreign influence is all there. It survived through many elections, basically. So, and every time the new election time, the political party, they make these promises, new hopes, but it doesn't work. So you are right. The political awareness awakening is huge compared to the if you last decade, so 10 years ago, the youth generation who led the uprising against the Hasina, this Gen Z generation, they are actually very sharp in that sense. They study the reality and they study the history of the society that went through these changes, and if you study, then you can that it's not changing. It's not about changing the faces.
Yeah.
Or removing one political party and bring another political party within the same political culture and same framework, because it's not going to make a real change.
Yeah.
So this is why they were demanding these things, and this is also a demand of the time, because it's not only about Bangladesh. If you look at the whole region and the internationally, the political situation, from that perspective, unless and until we change our way of governance, our economy from the classes of the the international organizations that dictates our economy, and also the security and sovereignty issue it's at stake. On the reality, what's happening around the world. So from that perspective, you cannot think in the same way as you could think in 20 years ago. The small nations like us, they felt safe at the time because their sovereignty was respected. But if you look at the world reality now, it's no longer the case. So every nation, they needs to take over the control of their own security, own sovereignty, and also the reality of our neighbor, like India, and the Hindutvadi ideologies. It was not that prominent, a couple of decades ago, but now they are propagating their ideas. They want to establish a greater India, what they call Akhand Bharat. So to include Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan,
and even beyond that,
beyond that.
to the Arab
So
world.
this reality, maybe our father and our forefathers, they did not face. But that was not the case. So this is unreality. On another hand, we have the other, geopolitical situation surrounding the Myanmar, China, and the Rohingya issues that we have. So with all this, if you take into account, then Bangladesh can no longer afford, to be, a satellite state. Then there is no meaning of sovereignty. There's no meaning of independence. So it's a demand of the time, actually. The people could think that, we have to have a better system where we can, manage our own affairs rather than being led by the foreign powers.
I mean, it's interesting you said that it's more of a global change happening. Because I was thinking about the Prime Minister of Canada recently, Carney, where he said that he felt the sovereignty of nations was being compromised with the way that the US now is operating. We saw how the president of Venezuela, Maduro, was literally kidnapped.
Exactly.
And these are countries who would say in the past maybe would have had a certain degree of sovereignty over their own nations. But even now that's being questioned, let alone the Muslim world, which has always been abused to a large degree. So what do you think the reasons are for that awakening? What is the difference between 20 years ago? Because actually I was last in Bangladesh over 20 years ago. And at that time, the hurtas, the strikes, were paralyzing the country. And people were just, BNP was striking, Awami League was striking, the Chutro Leagues were fighting. And I remember seeing all of this firsthand. And it seems like people have moved on from that. And this is quite interesting. Why have we moved on? And I'm not saying this in a negative sense, but why have people realized that this old kind of party politics has failed the country so miserably?
20 years ago, when after the fall of President Ershad was a general and it's an army rule, and then in 1990, we restored democracy. So then people had a hope that the democracy would work. And then we had two dominant political parties, Awami League and BNP. So there was main rivalry between these two political parties. So either one party ruled, then another party was on the opposition. And the culture of democratic politics in our country is that the opposition always try to, they expect that government will fail and they can come to the power. And the government always try to suppress the oppositions. And they use the state apparatus, institutions, judiciary, the security forces to suppress the oppositions. So that was the battle, Tom Jerry battle was going on. But after 2008, when Sheikh Hasina came into power, then she came that time very strongly because she had the support from the West, from India. That's the foreign side. She was lucky to get their support. She also managed to control the army in her favor, the media, civil societies. So all this was in her control, basically. So she was very strong in that sense. The only thing she could not manage is the people. But that's the last thing. without the people, she could sustain 3 terms, because in the current political framework, I would say, even if it sounds irony, but the people is the last thing.
Yeah,
You know,
of course.
and you need those, the institutions, those set up in favor of you. And she had that. So she became very strong. And she stabilized many things. In terms of the opposition party, she controlled them, suppressed them. Some of the top Islamic political party leaders, they were hanged on the allegation of the war crime during the 1971. So she was very strong, but there are some structural weakness within this democratic political system and the what we can call the capitalist economic system. So the price of essentials was so high. The corruption was like widespread, and people did not like the foreign interference too much, especially from India. So Sheikh Hasina had a very good relationship with India, in a sense that we became a 33 number state of India. You understand?
Yeah.
So she gave the transit facilities, all kind of facilities, all kind of treaties and deals, and mostly, if we look at it, it's not the interest of the people was preserved, rather than the interest of the India was served by our prime minister. So these things actually strike the people. So they wanted to get out of this. It's not, so you need to understand the uprising in July 2024. It's not that the other political parties like BNP or other democratic political parties, they could lead this. It was a leaderless movement. It's the general students, general people come onto the street.
Yes.
So basically, my point is, when they removed the Hasina, it's not that they clean this place for BNP or someone to take over. Eventually, through the election, BNP now is coming to the power.
Yeah.
But that was not the intention. It's not the BNP led this uprising.
Yeah.
So the going back to your point, like, is awakening the people's awareness, is, I would say, because of this generation, they are so connected. Because they use the technology, the social media. So 20 years ago, only the handful people could read the reality of the world, and now everyone gets what's happening.
Yes.
And I would especially say that in last 10 years, the youth generation, when they look at the world reality, the treatment towards the Muslim by the West, it generally, in any Muslim land, you will see the anti-Western sentiments is there.
Yes.
And in Bangladesh, on the top of that, you have anti-Indian sentiment, which is coming also from the same values, the Islamic, perspective.
Yeah.
Because within the India, you see the Muslim population are being, subject to torture. In the Kashmir, and what's happening in other part of the minority Muslims.
Yeah.
And also the rise of Hindu fundamentalist groups there. So that generally created a tension. So people wanted to get emancipation from this, the foreign dominance.
So kind of, I've got other questions in mind, but I want to really understand the point here. One of the differences that people have seen maybe in the Bangladeshi uprising versus some other uprisings is that there seems to have been a real objective met in the sense removing Sheikh Hasina, but also removing her control over the country. So it wasn't like she just put a deputy in charge and then they took over, but the people demanded that she leave. How was that achieved? Why was that allowed to happen? Because we know our governments are very repressive. Mm-hmm. At what point who called the shots to say, look, Sheikh Hasina has to go? And was that genuine? Was that change genuine? Even before we're talking about what happened in the next 18 months in the elections, just at that point when Sheikh Hasina fled to India.
Well, in any uprising, if we look at even including the Arab Spring and those things, uh, it's not only about the people. It's also you need to get support from the security forces,
Okay.
especially armies.
Yeah.
Either you get their support or they need to be neutral, at least.
Yes.
Otherwise, you cannot be successful. So, on the ground, on the street, people came spontaneously. So, it was difficult for Hasina to control, because if it was led by any particular political party and any leaders, you can arrest them or manage them somehow, at the stick or carrot.
Yeah.
But this one, she couldn't even understand. Because people coming out spontaneously, leaderless movement, you can say.
Yes.
So she didn't know who to manage. That's one thing. And at the same time, when she ordered the security forces to fire on the people, and the young people, students, they got shot and killed brutally, that even created more anger. And security forces, the army, the police, they are also part of this population.
Yes.
When they see this, then at the end, the army, they took the side of the people and they refused to fire at the people or protect Hasina.
Yeah.
So this is how it unfolded, and she had to leave. She didn't have any other choice.
Yeah.
But this time, because the Awami League, her party as a whole party, they established a very authoritarian ruling all over the country. So when Hasina left, the other leaders, they had to leave, because they knew otherwise they could not save themselves from the anger of the people. Yes. So you can say it's not the fall of one leader, it's a fall of the whole political party there.
Yes.
And people wanted to take bit further. They wanted to say, okay, if this is the fall of one political party, why don't we change the whole system? And that they had the opportunity, but I think they did not have the enough preparation. So that this Hasina is so oppressive, we want to remove her. But after Hasina, what next?
Would you replace her with?
But that requires a pre-planning, a particular, to prepare the people for that. So then everybody came out and starting to, presenting their ideas. Like the secularists, they are saying that yes, people now can enjoy more secularism. The leftists, they came out and they said, okay, people want a more socialism. So Islamists did the same.
Yeah.
So it's not any particular a group who led this movement, and they can come and claim that, okay, now we are the winner and we want to implement our way of ruling.
Okay.
So that was not the case. So the vacuum was there.
Yeah.
But within the vacuum, what we expected, that if the interim government could ensure a fair environment to discuss all the options, and they could read the aspiration and the sentiment of the people properly, then we could get to a proper conclusion that what we want. But I feel that they did not allow this. Rather, they had their particular agenda. They wanted to keep the system keep going, to continue. And that is because the system, the secular democratic system, it is, and the West is particularly concerned about the system to continue. So they ensured this through their people, I would say, that go there and make sure the people do not get so frustrated. Give them some hope that the system will. They acknowledge that there are some problems, but we are here to fix it. So this is how they managed to contain that frustration and channel the whole thing towards the election, so that at least they can keep the system intact.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. You mentioned that the BNP did have a landslide victory last week. So they won the vast majority of seats in power. But it's not, as you say, a new party. It's a very familiar party that's ruled before. And even Tariq Rahman is the son of Khalida Zia. So again, it's like cut from the same cloth, really. Because of that, and the fact that people know that, how come the BNP were able to secure such a landslide victory?
Well, in the election, if you look at the contesting political parties, they represent more or less the same thing in terms of their policy, the solution. The Islamic alliance led by Jamaat Islami, the only selling point for them was that they are very honest or pious,
Okay.
or their integrity was their selling point. But in terms of the solution, like how would they recover the economy, or how would they deal with this foreign interference, there was no fundamentally different solutions, because they were all working on the same framework. So, and on the other hand, the BNP had the experience of running the country.
Yeah.
So people thought that the BNP, and as they have the experience, they have the link. So within the system, we can give them a chance. And the Islamic law, people have a good perception about them, but at the same time, people do not have enough confidence that they can actually run the state within this system, because these people, they are probably good at the Islamic knowledge, Sharia and those things. But if you run the country a secular state, and you have to make deal with the World Bank, IMF, USA and European Union, then you need that the diplomacy, the bargaining power. And people thought the Islamic law is lacking on that side.
Okay.
Despite that, they also did well.
Yeah.
Because it's not that BNP got more seats, but in terms of the number of votes, they are very close.
The popular vote was very similar.
Yeah, similar. So they did well. So that is why people gave them a chance, and it's not like this mandate is not unconditional. This point I must highlight.
Yeah.
The people, because the BNP is saying that we are now different. Tariq Rahman has changed, living in the UK for 17 years. He is now more mature, and he is showing that. And they are also making promise that we want to, do a new type of politics. And he is also, time and again, he is saying that we have a plan for the country. So we want to change the political culture and all that kind of things. But despite that, I would say the mandate is not a unconditional mandate.
Yeah.
Because people has to vote for someone, and that is why they got the vote.
Yeah.
But ultimately, people will look forward to the performance, the delivery. If they can deliver, and meet the expectations of the people, then they can go. It's not a unconditional, mandate.
Yeah. So unlike maybe in the past where these parties just revolved between each other, this is actually a situation where people made an assessment and said, look, this is the best option we have, given they have at least a track record of ruling, but not with this kind of open-ended thing where we'll leave you to it. There is going to be an expectation that real change has to occur.
Right. Like, our fathers and forefathers, when they supported Ziaur Rahman, the father of Tariq Rahman, or the Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the father of Sheikh Hasina, at that time the loyalty was very, on the personality based, and didn't look forward to the performance in that way. And they were very loyal to them, no matter what they do. But my point is, this generation is different. They are not like, loyal to a person. Whatever happens, we want Tariq Rahman to continue. That is not going to happen. Rather, they give the mandate to him to perform, to deliver what they want. So this political awareness or awakening, I think it make the difference.
Yeah, and we saw something similar, I guess, in Pakistan with the fact that people didn't want to go for the standard, Muslim League versus PPP. It was like Imran Khan was seen as a potential alternative to a system that was based on personality and based on wherever your party loyalties, were. You gave your party loyalty to one of the parties, and there was a very clear structure in place, and you just elected whoever was the head of that party. There was no questions. But there is now an expectation that you want someone in power that represents the people. But we saw in Pakistan that was also taken away from them by the army. So, I mean, moving on now in terms of thinking about Bangladesh, what are the biggest challenges the new government's going to face in terms of making actual transformational change in the country, based on the fact that you talked about the institutions that have real power?
Yes, look at the situation in Bangladesh. The most of our institutions are politicized. We do not have the independent judiciary. So judiciary has been used as a tool to oppress the oppositions, to get the political, agenda. And also the economy. Our economy is dictated by foreign institutions like IMF, World Bank. Our currency devalued, and then the price of the essentials is so high, cost of living is so high, and then the corruptions, then the citizen right. There's no citizen right in that sense, and also most importantly, the law and order. All this needs to be, restored. People need to get confidence on this. So that is one of the big challenges for Tariq Rahman, how he can manage this, because these are the result. These problems are connected with the system, the framework of the system. It's not about a person only. I'm sure when Sheikh Hasina came into power, she did not want it to be a fascist. So she wanted to, deliver. She wanted to be popular, definitely. But it's the system that made her a fascist ruler over the time. And the same system is there. So some people think that, okay, a charismatic leader can make a big difference. But it is very unlikely that only the personality of a leader can make a big difference unless we change the structure of these institutions. And it's not only that, the very basis of the state, is now under spotlight. Do we want to continue Bangladesh as a secular democratic state? So, the basis and the values upon which the country is built upon, that is now even, under question. So this, your generation with that level of political awakening is definitely a challenge for Tariq Rahman, because he needs to deliver. He cannot just make some slogans and some, cosmetic change.
Yeah.
That previously Sheikh Hasina could sustain, just making a rhetoric of development, like we are doing development. Some big project she undertook, metro rail, flyovers, big power plant, and painting a picture that we are doing very good.
Yeah.
But now it's going to be difficult, because we know even if you are doing this, underneath this big project, the poverty lies. People are suffering.
Yes.
So this generation, they do analysis. You cannot just make them, deceive them. So That is a big challenge. So he needs to, make these changes, and without making the structural change, that is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Okay, talking about the foreign influence. Now people want a complete independence. Like, we don't want to be dictated by India or even the Western powers.
Yeah.
But it is it's going to be very difficult, not only for Tariq Rahman, whoever comes into the power in the current setup, where anyone coming to the power, they are coming with the blessing of these foreign powers. And there are so many stakes they have in their hand. For example, our main source of foreign earning is the export, garment export. And the main market is USA and European Union.
Yes.
So they can control a lot. With India, we share border, we share river, and our main trade partner, and also the supplier of our energies, the power plants and those things. So in many ways we are connected. So it take courage and mindset, a different mindset, actually, if you want to stand, against them. So it's very difficult that you make people happy and make them happy at the same time when they have a conflicting interest.
Yes.
In both parties. So I'm not sure how Tariq Rahman can do it, but there's a lot of skepticism, and it's remain to be seen that how he can, handle this.
Yeah. But as you say, there's a mindset change, but ultimately there's also, does that person have a vision for real change? Or is that person just there to take up the seat in power? Was he just waiting in the wings until Sheikh Hasina was deposed and I'll continue my father and my mother's legacy now and take power like Sheikh Hasina did before? It was almost like, it's a family business, really.
No,
or is that not the view that people are having in Bangladesh? Do people have a more sympathetic view?
It's not okay. No, well, Bangladesh is a very diverse. It's a population of 18 million, 180 million. So obviously there are some loyal people for the BNP, but if we talk about the youth generation, who form like now 40% of the vote, and these people, you cannot take it for granted. Like, I got the vote, I got the mandate, so I can do whatever I like. These days are gone.
Yes.
So you need to deliver. Now, as you say, that does he have genuine intention to make this change, or the mindset? It's difficult. It's difficult because when he comes to the power with the sorry, can we repeat this?
Yeah, this one.
It is definitely difficult for him because he is representing this system, and within this system there are some limits that he can do and he cannot do.
Yes.
So, and within the system, it is tested and proven that something you cannot achieve. For example, a independent judiciary is very difficult. Even if he wants, then the opposition party, especially the Jamaat Islami, now they have come stronger opposition. Okay, so Tariq Rahman must deal with this opposition party. I mean, otherwise in next election they will pose a bigger threat. So even if he has a long-term plan, you see the problem that which one he should give priority to the long-term plan, or in the next 5 years time, this opposition who is actually knocking the door, just behind his neck, he needs to also do something about them, to discredit them, oppress them. I don't know in which way he would go. Probably he would not be as brutal as Hasina, because that backfires, he knows.
Yes.
But he has to come up with something to deal with this. This Islamic sentiment, and that is growing and growing. It's not only about the Jamaat-e-Islami. There are other Islamic parties. They are also getting grounds and support because of what's happening around the world.
Yes.
Generally, there is a Islamic rise of Islam and the demand among the youth. So this is a difficult choice for him. So even if he genuinely wants to deliver something, that is not so easy within the system, because the system will compel to do something.
Yeah.
The point I was making, that Sheikh Hasina probably did not want to be a fascist, but she didn't have a choice.
Yeah. I think that's an important point. So irrespective of the intention of the person,
Exactly.
the system will eat you up. The system will demand of you things that will not allow you to bring about real change, even if you entered it sincerely.
Right.
Even if you entered it and said, I'm going to do such and such project and change the future of Bangladesh. But the reality is you're crippled by external loans. You have foreign influence. You're dependent on foreign energy. And then you realize, hang on, I'm not going to change anything unless I actually move in a way that's independent.
Exactly.
Move in a way that actually does not make me dependent to those who do not have good intentions and designs over Bangladesh, like the US, the fact that Maduro wasn't playing ball with, oil shipments and other things. They just literally kidnapped the guy.
Exactly.
Or the fact that India, as we know, has, as you say, influence over Bangladesh, more than just trade. I believe, some discussions I've had with family members, even to this day, Indian agents are well known to have a presence in Bangladesh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they have their network. The Indian, the raw.
Yeah.
They have influence in within our institutions. So it's going to be very difficult for him to dismantle this network. And say, for example, the corruption. Even if you are a sincere leader, if you want I don't want to do any involved in the corruption, but your party is huge on the grassroots level, in the district level, on the village level. How can you control these things? Because the corruption is institutionalized.
Yes.
It's not only with the person. Many people think that, okay, if the leader is honest, everything going to be sorted. And sometimes people look at the history. For example, they're looking at the Khalifa Omer bin Khattab. At that time, he was very honest, and that's why probably the society was honest. But that's not the case. It's actually the society was ruled by a system that did not allow any institutional corruption, and that's why he could lead. So it's not that that if we get a Omer, and we will get a pure society.
Yeah.
It's other way around.
Yeah.
If you can establish a society based on the accountability and justice, then you can produce not like Omer, but a honest leader.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because one of the things that you mentioned was that Jamaat-e-Islami was seen by many people as being religious and being sincere in terms of on a very personal basis, but that they didn't have actually any solutions to offer in terms of economy. I think one example that you gave, one of the criticisms that's made is that how can we have a system that delivers real change when the people don't have the culture that they need? So the value system of the time of Umar Khattab is that people would say that the system and the value system were aligned. But unfortunately, when you look to, as you say, many of the cases of corruption and the institutions that have been corrupted, it's the value system has become corrupt. I mean, if I just give you an example, and I know there's many examples in Bangladesh and Pakistan and other places, but I'll give you an example from Jordan. I wanted to get my passport done. And I'm from the UK, so I have entitlement to a Jordanian passport. I'm going through all the processes, and at every stage, someone says you need to go and see this person, and they'll sign this document, and go and see this person. Maybe give them money. I was like, no, I don't do any of this. So the system doesn't allow me to be even, clean, because it's corrupt at every level, and every person who's operating within it
Right.
is also adopted that way of working. So even the common person is being corrupt.
Exactly.
And the person is being corrupt with their own family when it comes to the land and inheritance and things like that. So how do you challenge that? How do you break this value system that has become so polluted?
Well, that is why you need a complete structural change, fundamental change, because within the system, then even if, as you said, if someone is honest and he has a very good intention, it's not possible for him to deliver. But you have to look at this problem from and find out the root cause for this. The institution actually make this corruption. For example, if you cannot punish the corrupt people, the corruption, they get encouraged. So if someone feel that I'm above the law, that also make the system corrupt.
Yes.
So ensuring the justice. But if you look at this democratic system, when the judiciary operates, even if you claim to be independent, but the law with which they are actually adjudicating the issues, these are coming from the parliament. And the parliament, these people are also part of the ruling class. So they wouldn't make any law that will go against them.
Yeah.
So you see the problem is within. But in Islamic system, what you have the judges are limit only by the Sharia, and they are not limited by the ruler. So they can pass the verdict even it goes against the ruler. But in the current system, you cannot do this, because all the rules, law, everything coming from this class, the ruling class.
So you're saying right from the top that everything is being polluted through this system, from the political elites to the judiciary, who's also impacted by them.
Yeah. So my point is, I just make this point that this problem are connected with the system.
Yes.
It's not connected with the person only. Obviously, if you get a better person, probably you get a slightly better result, but that is not good enough, because even if one person is honest while he is in opposition, you never know if he go to the power, he might change. But if you have a system in place, then even if you have a person who is not maybe that honest or that level of integrity, but the system will ensure the people get the justice.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have seen this in the history. In the Islamic history, we have seen that there was a time when we had some ruler not that pious, but but that did not make a big difference on the ground, people getting the justice. Because I understand the leader is important, but it's not only about the leader who rule the country. Otherwise, that is a authoritarian rule. For example, during the time of Hasina, anything happened, people would seek the attention of the Hasina, because they knew that the system wouldn't work. My father, like someone's father was killed, they stand in front of the Prime Minister house, can we get justice?
Yes.
Why he needs to do that? Because he know that if we go through the system, I'm not going to get the justice.
Yeah.
But if the Sheikh Hasina, if she gives a indication or she favors this, then he will get it.
Yeah.
So we don't want this, that everything will be person-centered
Yes.
rather than system needs to work. And the core problem is that this current system, the very system that produces the fascist ruler like Hasina, will that system, with that, will Sheikh Tariq Rahman will be able to do, a different, result.
Yeah. So thinking about that and thinking about the Islamic card of Jamaat Islami, when you said that they obviously did secure quite a large number of seats, I believe it was about a quarter, their bloc, did they have any political solutions as part of their manifesto? Or was it purely on the basis of just on an individual basis in terms of their religiosity, in terms of how practicing they were, from a very individualistic perspective? Or was there any debate happening in Bangladeshi circles about Islamic solutions?
Well, they wanted to win, so they wanted to actually win over both bloc,
Okay.
Islamist and also there are secular blocs.
Okay.
So they actually played both ways, because if they come up too Islamic, then they thought they would lose that side,
Okay.
and they would also lose the foreign support that they need to be on the power. So I don't know how they did it, but in their manifesto, election manifesto, they propose some solutions, but within the system, like not very radical,
Okay.
but within the system, that as creative as you can be,
Okay.
which is not bad. Many people liked it, but you cannot compare this with the a revolutionary manifesto that and they managed to get vote because of this. And also they had to compromise, I would say, on some of the Islamic values to get support of that secular bloc. So now it remains to be seen that in future which way they take, because if they want to please both sides, it didn't work.
Mm.
But I don't know in future what they would do.
Yeah.
And it also depends on the in the people. If the people keep demanding Islam, then all Islamic party will force to adopt the pure Islamic solution rather than the secular democratic solutions.
No. Does that mean it's very interesting? I mean, there's probably one of the best analogies in terms of politically what's happened in Bangladesh is probably Egypt, because you had the situation where Mubarak was removed from power, and then in the elections that happened probably soon, after, Morsi came to power, and he came on the card of Akhwan Muslimin, which are typically known to be in line with Jamaat Islami thinking in the Arab world. And obviously they won a majority and they had much maybe stronger roots in Egypt. But ultimately they were forced from power even with the compromises they made, because it still was not acceptable.
Exactly.
So the West could not tolerate, for example, his language about the occupation, the Israeli occupation. So the challenges that you face when you're coming in from the system within and trying to change it are immense, because all the foreign powers will jump on you. So, I mean, I looked at the response to Tariq Rahman coming to power, the BNP. Trump is, congratulating him. The West is congratulating him. There is no, they're not upsetting the balance of power in the region in any way. So how are the people seeing that? How are people seeing the response to the BNP coming to power, and the fact that actually politically they can still see all the major powers in control of the situation? At what point will there be a demand for something more than just another political party, another term in office? Where will that aspiration change?
Well, aspiration is there, but for some people, thinking out of box is not easy.
Yeah.
And if you look at the history of the human civilization, the general people, they have their aspiration, I would say, at some level. It's up to the leaders. who can actually read it and let it, to the higher level. It's not that all people can at the same time automatically uplift their, aspiration.
Yeah.
So it's up to the leaders. So I would say the aspiration for change, demand for Islam is there.
Yes.
If you can read this, the pulse of the people.
Okay.
But it's up to the leader. So the leader, if the Islamic leaders, people, they capitalize this sentiment, they can actually take it to further and further.
Yeah.
But if the Islamic leader, they fail, the secular will take over. And they will sell secular, and they will continue the secular system with the the Islamic flavor.
Yes.
So somehow, that is, I think, the plan of the West. The West is planning that, though, because they know the people have the Islamic sentiment, so they don't want to challenge that. They want to also make sure the people are satisfied on that side. And that is why the West is happy, because Awami League or seen as more anti-Islamic, and BNP is somewhere in the middle ground.
Okay.
So they are at the secular, at the same time seen to be pro-Islamic.
Okay. So they're channeling those strong aspirations of the people.
Exactly.
in
So
a way that-
marrying both
yeah,
sentiment together.
Yeah.
Jamaati Islami is also trying to be on that line, like we can accommodate all this. So instead of talking about Khilafah, Sharia, they are talking about like welfare state, more justice. That is their tone.
Yeah.
Then my point is, if you come half-heartedly for anything, you cannot expect a best result. So that is my fear. The skepticism is there that half-hearted things, you at this time, at this juncture, you cannot expect a better result. It will rather make our situation worse, if not. It will make our situation worse.
On that point that you mentioned about talking about real fundamental change, there was an interesting statement from Tariq Rahman about fostering a forward-looking relationship with Pakistan, and that language has changed a lot over the last few years. I particularly remember during the uprising that even in Pakistan, people were standing in solidarity with the protesters in Bangladesh, and vice versa, and even reading Bengali poetry, which is very strange for something that unfortunately has been a lot tense over the last 50 years. But even I remember seeing a professor from Dhaka University talking about a future where Pakistan and Bangladesh are more closely aligned. And even the army, some former officers, retired officers, saying something similar. What is the sentiment of the people in Bangladesh about a vision where they're not seeing themselves purely in a nationalistic context? Because we know that, as you mentioned, there are many crises affecting that region. The Rohingya Muslims who have been genocided, essentially, and the biggest refugee camp in the world, we know in Cox's Bazar. We know Pakistan has its own internal problems, the removal of Imran Khan, the kind of dominance of the army again. All of these challenges that we face, what are the people of Bangladesh thinking about a future that isn't purely restricted in a nationalistic context? Is there discussions that see our unity, our power, more on a regional Islamic basis?
Yes, the pure nationalistic sentiments is fading away anyway around the world. And in our realities, we have a neighbor, India, who is actually continuously making threats. So in order to tackle India, you need to get friends, alliance. So obviously Pakistan coming in that region, and with these military capabilities, nuclear weapons, so people look forward to that. That's one issue. Second is, we used to be the part of Pakistan. So we share a lot of the history and those things. And especially when, during the time of Sheikh Hasina, the deliberate narrative was created and propagated anti-Pakistan sentiment.
Yes.
So, and she did it so that people can be more friendly to India. With the fall of Hasina, this narrative is now not there,
Okay.
and the falsehood of that narrative is also exposed. So that makes the reaction from the people that we should look at Pakistan in that way,
Okay.
because Pakistan is not dominating us like India. Rather, whatever we have, the relation we have is like a cooperation.
Okay.
So, and also a Muslim nation. So, brother, as a Muslim, we share a lot of cultural things, religious things. So, all this bringing these two nation together, you can say. And when you have a common enemy like India, then the enemy's enemy is your friend.
Yeah.
So this is how, in the South Indian context, not only Pakistan, the Nepal, Bhutan, and other countries, Sri Lanka, India has India tried to dominate all these neighbors.
Okay.
And if you go and study, in all these countries, you have very strong anti-Indian sentiment. So if you want to tackle India, you need to capitalize this, unite these people, so that you
So
can
some of it's
come
coming,
out stronger.
Yeah.
But some people think that also, that in order to tackle India, maybe we need a good relationship with West.
Okay.
That is another line of thinking.
Okay. Okay.
But if you look at the geopolitical reality, because for West, especially for USA, and their objective is to contain China, and for that, their partner is India. So it's not possible that to tackle India, you get support from USA. And also the track record of USA, towards the Muslim nation, that also not very good. So people cannot rely on this.
Yeah.
So those who put thoughts on this, they can come up with the idea that for us the Muslim needs to be united, because if you want that our sovereignty, our security is in our hand, then ultimately you got to form this kind of alliance, whether through a Khilafah state, or for some people who cannot see it up to that level, they think at least some cooperation among the Muslim nations, so that we can build a bloc.
That shift in mentality is starting to occur, though, in a real way.
Exactly.
What you're describing, where they're not necessarily seeing that animosity in terms of the past, but actually seeing where the potential unity.
Exactly, and the mutual benefit.
The mutual benefit, the culture, as you say, there is a natural link there. You're not talking about an alien culture, a culture that's very similar. If you were to go to Dhaka, or if you go to Lahore, you're not going to see a hugely different population in a sense. But they see that the risks they're facing in terms of a dominant India, as you say, a West that doesn't really have their interests at heart, then naturally they're gravitating towards where can that unity. But as you say, imagining a situation of real political unity is very difficult for some people.
Yeah, for some people it is, the thinking is too far-fetched for them. But for some, I would say, especially for the youth generation, because they have come out of this fair zone, the box. They can make many things, because I remember after the July Revolution, the youth people, they were drawing a map of Bangladesh and posting in their social media. That map included some part of India. That means they want that this part we need to take over. Some part, the Arakan, the Rohingyas land in Myanmar, they draw this, and they said this how they want to see the Bangladesh to expand. So
And is that in response to the persecution of the Rohingya?
It's the Rohingya and the treatment of India.
Yeah.
So what my point is that this generation people, they are not confined to this nationalistic idea.
Yeah.
You see, even the national anthem that we have now is written by a Hindu poet of India, the West Bengal. And people were demanding, some people, not everyone, that we should change this. So this kind level of debate we didn't have before.
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying, that it's a different political era we are in now.
Yes.
So maybe the point I'm making, because those who are listening to us, if they belong to the older generation, they probably wouldn't understand this. The psychological revolution that has gone through the minds of the young people, is huge.
Yes.
It's in a different level. So people can see only that, okay, the people come on the street and they made Hasina to flee. But it's not that all. The people who came onto the street, they are not like ordinary people we had in 90s.
Yes.
It's a different generation who have their own study, who have their own, analysis, and their expectation is higher.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, one of the most poignant images I remember seeing in the Bangladeshi uprisings was the Palestinian sentiment. And in fact, during that time, it was the height of the genocide. And there was a very strong correlation between Bangladesh rising up and Gaza, which is strange because they've got really nothing directly related to each other. But people felt the rising up of a Muslim nation somehow was a sign for the whole Muslim world.
Right.
So even on the Palestinian news stories, which never really cover anything else, they were covering the Bangladeshi uprising. And it kind of talks about what you're saying, which is people see way beyond the limitations that we've been given, that this is our own national causes. People actually see the interlink between the issues in Gaza and the issues in Bangladesh, the aspirations of the youth there, the aspirations of the youth in the Muslim world. So I think it's just interesting when you think about it like that. It's much more global than we sometimes see it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, just I wanted to end on a note really of advice maybe to the Muslim activists of Bangladesh. What would you say is the biggest lesson you want to give them, or the biggest warning as activists on the ground in Bangladesh? You're very obviously aware of the situation and what happened in the last few decades. What should they be aware of, and what should their aspirations be as, leaders, youth leaders in the future?
Well, the people of Bangladesh, they are predominantly Muslim, and they had the love for Islam always been there. There's no question that they have full subscription to Islam. But the Islamic way of living, the Islamic political system was not presented to them in that way. And the West and secularists, they took the advantage. They have been ruling us for long. And every time they make a mess, then the Islamist lot, the people, they come on the street and clean that mess, and then another secular people come. That's been happening. So now we need to move away from that. We need to first of all see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an opportunity, by removing Hasina. It's a blessing, because it's, as I said, that it's a leaderless movement. So it happened because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted. I would say that He is the mastermind.
Yes.
And gave us the opportunity. So it's now up to us, the people who want Islamic system to re-established, or the Islamic way of life, to a revival of Islamic way of life. They must present their Islamic solutions on the ground. If we can keep it up, the aspiration the youth people have, and equip them with the argument, with the materials, with the solutions from the history, from our sources like Quran and the Sunnah and the literature we have in the Islam history, as so that they can compare the how better system we have in comparison to the Western system, and people can make a very informed decision and the conviction. They already have love for the Islam. They need to get more and more conviction in the system, and they already have a very distrust on the Western system. And if you can break it down further, exposing the things, and many of the things is being exposed anyway.
Yes,
after the what's happening around the world, abstain file and those kind of things. So this is a high time, and it's up to the Islamic activists, Islamic leaders. They need to come out full-heartedly, not half-heartedly, and present the Islam without any compromise, no distortion. And then the people will take it, and inshallah, if this awareness is there, then whoever comes to the power, they will be forced to accommodate this, and if they fail, they had to leave.
Yeah.
So the election happened, a new government is in power now. That doesn't mean that's the end of the revolution and the end of the uprising we had in July 2024. Rather, I would say this has gone to a different phase now, and people needs to continue their demand, make their voice loud enough, so that this ruler, either they are forced to make changes or leave it, and then the real change will come.
And that's an important point, because sometimes sentiment, as you say, can be misleading, because someone has a sentiment, a love for Islam, but they don't actually understand the substance of Islam. And that's why there used to be a bit of it was almost like an insult. They used to say Al-Quran is like dasturuna. The Quran is our constitution. But then when you ask them, they don't actually have any they can't elaborate on what that means. And I feel like when you were saying that you have to offer real solutions, you're pointing to that. You're saying that Islam does have solutions. It does have real economic solutions. It does have a way of solving poverty. It has a way of collecting funds. It has a way of dealing with nationalism, uniting the people. It has a way of having a fair judiciary. But Islam is never visualized in that way. It's always visualized in a very either individualistic manner
or as a slogan,
exactly. Exactly. So that is there the space now for that? Do you feel that now there is the space? Is there going to be less repression and more opportunity for people to present Islam in that in that kind of comprehensive way?
Like when you propose an alternative to the current system, it is always difficult and challenging, because every system wants to protect itself, and it doesn't allow this kind of voice. So it's always difficult, but as long as the demand is there, and the leaders, they can deliver it, there will be some challenges, but that would not stop us, and history witnesses this, because if you accept this, the status quo, then you cannot make the change. You got to raise up and then challenge the status quo. That is where you can make the real change.
Thank you very much for your time, Brother Rezaul Karim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.